What's up guys? Bud Johnson here. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching this video. Huge legendary shout out to the guys over at Leica Camera for sending the SL and the 50 Summilux combination for me to try out for a few weeks. It has been an absolute blast shooting with this camera. Now I wanted to make a quick video because I didn't see a lot of resources for wedding photographers who want to utilize this camera body in their workflow. So what I want to do is just real quickly kind of walk through how my genre, wedding photography, might set this camera up. We're only going to take a few minutes here. If you want to dive deeper, please feel free to leave a comment and I'll chime in below. But I want to walk you through the menus and see how my mind as a wedding photographer might set this camera up. So let's jump right in. So right away, if you push this button twice here on the top left of the menu, it actually takes you to the full camera menu option. And you'll see right off the bat, we've got a drive mode. And I'm not going to walk through like how to use the menu. It's pretty intuitive. I'm going to use the D-pad up here to kind of navigate, okay? So drive menu, I'm going to click over to take a look at it. As a wedding photographer, normally I would actually like it kind of continuous mode. Sometimes I'll leave it on single if I'm very precise, but I also found that continuous high speed for this particular camera is just insane. The file sizes are giant and it's so very fast, especially using the electronic shutter. So I actually leave it on the medium speed or even just the single, but we'll leave it on the medium speed right now. I want to go ahead and go back. Let's take a look at the focus mode. For me, I like it on AFS, autofocus to single, static. I want to find my subject, I want to pinpoint, I want to keep it there. Sometimes we can switch it to continuous and we'll get there in a moment as well. But let's go ahead and go back. Here we have the AF mode static again. Static and static is real easy just for me to kind of lock in what I want to see and rock and roll. I will show you in a moment how you can change some of your custom settings to switch it over from static to dynamic tracking, which really comes in handy when, say, a bridesmaid's walking down the aisle directly towards you. AF field size mode. So for this, I personally like to leave it at field rather than 1 point. 1 point definitely comes in handy if you're trying to be very precise. If things are really slowed down, say in a couple's portrait, or if you're shooting some details. But field I find really kind of works for my style of shooting with the wedding. Exposure meeting, we're going to stick with center weighted. Exposure compensation, nothing. Exposure bracket, nothing. Interval, we're not going to touch on. Flash settings, we're not going to touch on here. I personally have recently fallen in love with the electronic shutter and leaving it always on. I did ask some people at the wedding I shot 2 days ago, when I was taking a photo of you and you didn't hear a click, what did that feel like and sound like? And they admitted that it was a little weird. So I did have to give some verbal feedback, but I really like the electronic shutter, especially during ceremony time. You can just kind of quiet things down and be even less obtrusive to the day. So if we continue now to ISO, I tell you, I'm a big fan of manual everything. Normally I shoot manual ISO, manual aperture, manual shutter. But I tell you, recently I've fallen in love with auto ISO, and it helps when you're in like changing environments with, say, flickering lights. You can drop that shutter speed to the correct frequency and just let the camera handle the ISO change. Honestly, I felt a little lazy when I first switched to that, but now I find it's actually just a really easy move to make sure your photos are perfect. White balance, again, you've got this nice expensive camera. I'm all for using the auto white balance, make the camera work. You paid a lot of money for it and it does a great job. So for photo file format, I like to leave it as DNG plus JPEG. And that helps when you're reviewing your images later for, say, like a same-day slideshow when you're at the wedding, which I'm a huge fan of. And also just viewing your photos faster on your camera and in Lightroom. Photo aspect ratio, I leave it at 3:2. Sensor format, I leave it at 35mm. JPEG resolution, I do keep that at small, actually. I don't use my JPEGs for anything except for just like simple, quick reviewing, or as a last-ditch effort, last-ditch backup in case something horrible goes wrong, but I leave that as small. JPEG settings will skip because it's not that important to me. Video settings will skip now. Storage options, SD card 1 and SD card 2. The way I set mine up is I do DNG on SD1 and JPEG on SD2. Again, that's so I can almost set it and forget it, so I don't have to worry about having a backup. I know that my JPEG is a small JPEG, so it's not something I would use to deliver, but if something horrible happens to that first SD card, you do have a backup. I know some people like to do a direct copy, SD card 1 equals SD card 2, but I personally feel totally safe with DNGs on 1 and JPEG on the other. Edit file name, you can change that to whatever you like. I just leave mine as the standard L. Format, if you want to format your cards. For auto review, I usually leave mine off. I don't like to look at the back of my camera while I'm working. If I do want to review something or show somebody what they look like, you can very quickly push this top right button twice and it brings up the play, the preview option, and you can show people what they look like. Capture assistance, I don't really run with a lot of that either. I do have focus peaking set up. Mine is green, sensitivity is on low, manual focus aid is on, but grid setup, I don't have a grid or anything like that. AF setup, so again, I don't have the steps visible. I don't have an assist lamp, so we skip all that. Live view, so for live view, I do have the full screen, but I like to have a little information on there. Camera information shows. I don't bother with histograms or zebras. Focus peaking I like to leave on though. Copyright information, you can change that on your own to make it say whatever you like. User profile, you can save these profiles. So say you know you're shooting a wedding and you want to load your wedding profiles, load your wedding profile. But if you know you're shooting studio and you want something a little different, no auto ISO say, then you can always set that profile as a different number and load up your studio settings with your SL. It's pretty handy. Auto ISO settings. Now this one I'm not going to worry about for video today, but for photo, I do leave my limit values at something reasonable, say like 6400. Honestly, the SL handles 12,500 great. I'm actually going to go ahead and tweak that and change it right there and go ahead and commit those changes and bring it back. Key lock, I don't do key lock, pretty safe with my cameras. Customize control, now this one's pretty neat. So what I do going into here, so what I do for my customized controls, I'll show you what a few things I do. I do change the rear wheel directions and the front wheel directions just because, you know, coming from a different camera brand, it just felt more natural to me. Let me show you though the shortcuts. This is a pretty neat place to take a look at. Customized buttons are on. This means when you click and hold particular buttons on the camera, they do certain things. For mine, the upper left is going to change our focus mode. The lower left is going to change my white balance. The upper right is going to change my ISO, and my lower right is going to change my drive mode. And I'll show you real fast. If I kind of commit these guys, I'll start up the viewfinder and show you. You know, you can now click and hold this button, and you can change your ISO real easily with this wheel. So say you want to change your ISO from auto, you can switch out. If you want to change your drive mode, you know, say you're shooting single, some details, but it's going to happen real fast. Some kids are going to run through, and you know you need a faster shutter speed. That's going to a faster drive speed. You can change it on continuous medium real easily without going through all the menu options. If you want to change, you know, your focus mode, you can quickly hold that and change. I just find these are some of my favorites. On the other side of the camera, there's actually another button in the front. If you can see that there. If you click and hold that guy, for me, I have that set up so it changes my AF mode. So I can go from static to face tracking or dynamic. I really happen to love the dynamic mode on this camera, so frequently I'll change from static to dynamic pretty often. Let's go back to our menus here. So for customized controls, that's kind of what I rock and roll with. Display settings, I leave the eye sensor sensitivity high, so if you cover it up while you're shooting, the sensitivity is pretty high and it cuts off the LCD back screen. The LCD brightness, I usually leave mine on low or medium low. One, to save battery, and also I find the screen is really quite bright. Yeah, so medium low worked for me perfect the entire wedding 2 days ago, but right now I happen to like low, pretty easy to see. Acoustic signal will switch. Power saving is entirely up to you. For me, I have mine set to 5 minutes power off, 5 minutes all displays auto off. For Wi-Fi and things, we're going to skip that now. GPS, I keep mine off. Again, it's just a battery power option. For me to keep that GPS off means I have more battery. I'm not too concerned with the GPS. If I was shooting location, if we were out scouting, hiking, maybe I would stick with the GPS just to have that added value of knowing where I took every photo. Course date and time, you can change and fix that for you. Language, English, reset camera, so on and so forth. So that's all of the menu options for the SL. and how you might want to set it up as a wedding photographer. Again, it's totally subjective. Everyone shoots differently. Every genre of photography is differently. But for me, I looked online, I couldn't really see anybody using this in a wedding setting, break down how they set this camera up. So for me, if I'm going to shoot with the Leica SL with any lens combination, that's generally how I'm going to set my menu up so that I can shoot most effectively and always get that perfect image. Again, thanks so much for watching the video. I'm Bud Johnson. Thanks for checking out my YouTube channel. I hope that you learned something. Please feel free to drop a comment below. And of course, I appreciate if you subscribe and like this video. Thanks so much.